Hi guys, what's going on? And welcome back to an episode of Total War Arena. So, we are taking a look at the Tier 9 Carthage Javelins. Wow, these guys are tough. They are as bad as people have suggested. They're pretty poor in almost every way. So, let's kind of break down a little bit what I mean by that. So, let's start with the consumables. They're just such a poor choice of consumables. There is only one permanent consumable to pick from, and that's down payment. And if we just break down what's going on here, gone all a bit funny. Let me try that again. There we go. If we break down what it actually gives you, +5 body armor. I mean, great. It's not a bad thing. But when you have a base body armor value of 120 in Tier 9 10 games, to put this in mind, naked Falksmen have 140 base. So, yeah, it's really bad. So you're not close to even stopping anything with that level of body armor. So +5 on top of such a low value is nothing. +1 melee weapon damage, but the ranged unit, pointless. +11 missile weapon damage. Sounds good on the surface, completely redundant because at least, bearing in mind this is an unupgraded unit, I'm going to get +11 damage once it gets to the tuned. But bearing in mind how low the weapon damage is, 117 base, adding anything to that is pointless because, as I just said a minute ago, one of the lowest armoured units out there, Falksman, 140, the weapon damage isn't going to exceed that. So you're just going to be doing base penetration damage on almost anything unless you're lucky enough to encounter some other of these Tier 9 Javelins. So adding missile weapon damage, kind of what's the point? Because on almost anything, other than the lightest armoured units in the back, is going to be taking only penetration damage. So it's almost a redundant ability and 4 morale. Well, vaguely useful, I suppose. Then you've just got a choice of basically different ammunitions. I don't see the point in a 10-second buff for a little bit of movement speed. Handy, it has its moments, I'm sure, but not really worth it. And then I plump for the Bodkin Javelins, really because they're the only thing that increases penetration damage, and that's really the thing that matters. Get a little bit of extra range out of it as well. And as I say, the weapon damage is already so low that -47 weapon damage, it makes no difference because you're going to be doing penetration only anyway. So yeah, that's a pretty good overview actually of all the bad points about them, because I say really low missile weapon damage, pretty poor reload time. The penetration damage isn't that high. Really, these units are no better than, say, the Tier 4 Roman Javelins. I'd have a similar damage output to something like that. And that's kind of a real limitation. In fact, let's just switch over to, say, a lower tier Roman Javelin. If I pull out Sulla, and say was to pick, say, like, let's do Tier 6. I'm completely random, I've not looked at this before. This is not a planned exercise. So they're getting a base penetration damage of 65. Plus the equipment giving +16, and considering I can't take caltrops on these Carthaginians, so let's assume I take Fletchers, which gives more armor penetration damage modifier. Then the Romans at Tier 6 are doing, what's that, 85, 88? I'm not possible to get that high on the Carthaginians at Tier 9, so the damage output of these Carthaginians is really quite poor. They really need a little bit of love. And yeah, so all, and even then you get onto their abilities, and they're not particularly great either. Focus fire, obviously a natural one for all ranged units. Combined when you get skirmish tactics, it's fine. It's a glorified dash basically. It's a dash that gives you a little bit acceleration and turn speed as well. That's fine. I don't hate that. And given that I'm currently running them with Hasdrubal, which gives no real movement speed buffs, then it's nice to have. And then you get rapid throw. It's not I don't want to complain about it too much, but I'd rather have a hurl. For the -30, the -20% missile weapon range, when they have a pretty low range anyway, makes it pretty short. So you have to be really quite close to people to make advantage of this ability. Not that there's a negative effect just to knocking it on to see if you're in range, really, because you don't get a slowdown penalty like you do with some abilities. So it's not horrific, but I would rather have a hurl in that increased range, to be honest. So yeah, that's kind of how these guys are, and they really struggle a lot with it. Hasdrubal works okay with them, I feel. Is quite a good support commander. It's kind of like Caesar Javelins in that sense. It's kind of hard to get used to when I've played him just as a cavalry commander for so long, so I'm used to bribing myself and debuffing my enemies I'm immediately fighting, rather than getting involved in sort of assisting allies in quite the same way. So I find it quite hard to get the hang of remembering to buff allies and debuff enemies that are immediately in front of me. But it can be quite effective, you know, doing things like that minus 80% melee attack. That's almost like a double prescription. So certainly, once you get the hang of it, it's well worth using on enemy units. It can really be quite important, particularly if you're in a party and stuff. So yeah, I think Hasdrubal works well. Of course, you could also use Hannibal. It's the other perfectly viable option, because you get forced march basically, which is nice because you get that plus 19% movement speed. You can toggle it on and you can basically just leave it on permanently. Although you've got to remember that missile block chance if you're going to get shot at, and it does put the base movement speed up quite a lot. But one, I haven't got Hannibal to tier 9 yet, and two, I think it's silly in a way just to do it just for that little one speed. It's kind of like running Sulla over Caesar. It's nice for the speed, but in terms of supporting your team, you can do a lot more with Hasdrubal. But anyway, let's hop into a replay I had with some of the Sun Tzu guys, and we'll see sort of how tough these guys are in a battle to sort of have any decent impact with. So we are loading into our battle on Capua. I joined in with Mistru and some of the Sun Tzu guys, because really these javelins need a little bit of support if they're going to get through a battle in sort of any semblance of one piece. So it was great to be able to have a bit of infantry support with me to give me some protection. So yeah, we decided to go into the town. I just decided to follow along with KC and some of the pikemen, as well as Enosh with his spears. First off, we get some enemy cavalry starting to come towards us. I just wondered, I thought if I advance quickly, you never know, I might be able to get into range and get a volley off. Not to be. And then I should have we stop up here, we capture the point, and we hesitate here just to kind of see what's going on. Quite a bit of stuff then immediately pushing into the town, which was immediately quite a worry. Particularly some people pushing quite hard, some of these javelins here, and then some high tier, I think they're the Greek archers that they are. So quite a lot to contend with. I'm just having a bit of a hard time trying to dodge some of these arrows from the other Greek archers. So I start to push into the centre a little bit more to see if I can come into range of some of these Greeks. I noticed particularly guys like this who was playing as Miltiades. Obviously, very little missile block chance. Could be a bit of an opportunity for me. And I'm just sort of looking for my moments, trying to see what I can do, seeing what my opportunities are. I was going to show you while I'm here. You can see sort of like the weapon damage here. I'm getting 129 in the weapon damage. And then it was these guys I was looking at earlier with their body armor of 140. So I really, very rarely will be able to even get anything above penetration damage on. Completely, I've not got any armor at all. And everyone else's armor is obviously just far higher than the other Roman javelins. 138 base. So a little bit less. So if I shot them in the back, obviously they've got shields as well. So I'd have to shoot them in the back, and I may get a slight bit, you know, infantry and stuff. 177, 158. The cavalry is almost 200, 198, so I'm never going to stand a chance of being able to get any damage up against them. But, so yes, that's kind of one of the big problems with these guys, it's just their damage potential is very small. So with that in mind, I'm just sort of keeping around in the middle. It's kind of a hard situation I found myself in this battle. Tier 10 is very unlike any other tier, because everyone here, as a general rule, has a good idea what they're doing. Everyone's playing very carefully. Battles seem to be a much slower pace than, say, at tier 8, where people still make quite obvious mistakes. There was a mistake here though. This enemy cavalry tried to charge into me. I managed to move away and the archers pulled back, and then it exposed my back to me, and I just decided I was just going to hammer these guys. I know I'm causing friendly fire a bit. Obviously I was talking to them a bit in chat. Whether worth it or not, I don't know. I decided the best thing we could do was just to get that down. You know, particularly when we've got enemy archers kicking around that want to barrage us, and that cavalry had sort of got caught in a bad position. I felt I could do the damage I needed to do almost immediately, and so I just did it. And yeah, we caused about 100 friendly fire points, I think. So I felt it was worth it in the time. So yes, they still have some damage potential. Don't get me wrong. You know, you'll see here. I mean, you get a volley in. They do something. It's just that it's not all that high. It's just a problem compared to, say, the Roman javelins over here as well. And these guys get a raised shield at tier 9 as well, just to make them that little bit better. So yes, I keep moving up. It's the same problem though, is, you know, we've got this cavalry kicking around, knows exactly what he's doing. You know, he did make a mistake earlier, but he's still very aware. And he's sort of keeping me back. In many ways, perhaps makes a bit of a misplay, gets a bit too close. I get a volley or two off him at him, and go get another one in his back. Gets a good bit of damage. I was pleased with that. But it means I can't really stray from my infantry support. Probably in quite the same way that I would risk if I was in a lower tier game. One of the big differences I think at high tier. You know, I would push up, maybe have a go really hard at some of these Palatini, and instead I have to move up sort of with my support. I do take some risks, but really if you make a mistake or you take a risk and make a wrong decision, there's normally someone there to capitalise on your error. So we move up here, and I come into range of these archers, and I suffer a really bad barrage. Although Mr. gets a really nice barrage back, so they kind of tunnel visioned on me a little bit. But they did take out a good chunk of my health there as I pull back to my units here. And these cavalry are still circling, sort of looking for my blood. Just not quite found a way into me yet. And then in the centre, it's just turned into a bit of an infantry fight, but mostly just a missile duel really between two units, with the infantry trying to protect themselves from missiles and the missile units duking it out between themselves. So yeah, pretty brutal. Obviously, game so far, pretty low amount of damage output, not really contributed a lot compared to the rest of the team. And that's the problem I find with these guys, particularly in this tier, is how do you put that damage down? It's kind of hard. So obviously our friendly infantry starts to move up, and I start to move up with them. Which is fine. I'm just trying to find some sort of opportunity, see if I can find someone to get some extra damage against. But again, you know, having to stay with the infantry makes this hard, and that's the real problem. Combined with that, it's not, pikes aren't the best thing to really trying to keep yourself safe with, because obviously if I end up getting caught in front of them when something charges them, they've either got to kill me or they kill themselves. Because obviously as soon as they put their pikes down, they'll cause friendly fire. So I've got to be careful to try and stay in a position where I can get back behind them fully before they need to put their pikes down. But this, so I see the cavalry coming, so I'm trying to pull back to keep this guy, to keep the KC, giving him an opportunity to get his pikes down in time before the Greek cavalry charges. I managed to get a little bit of an opportunity here. This guy just gets a little bit too close, and I managed to get a few javelins off at him just to the edge of him. As he runs down the steps, we get a couple more as well, which was nice. And then I think as this guy runs up, I might be able to get a couple of volleys on him as well, which I do as he's routing. We'll get a couple of hits, but he realises what's going on, he pulls back that way. It's where Hurl would be really useful as an ability. You know, a 35% weapon range increase would be really useful there, just for getting that extra damage. Being a bit more user-friendly, I think, would be the way to put it, you know, in these sort of situations. So, the battle's really starting to tip in our favour now. There's still a couple of the enemy javelins left alive, but they're starting to struggle now. Even with their ray shields, you know, they're sort of being continually shot at the whole game, so they're slowly being sort of whittled away. Thankfully, I've not been targeted that much by the enemy archers. You know, we did take that barrage hit a little bit earlier on, but largely been able to avoid them. But here is kind of where I get caught in the position I didn't want to be. He goes down his pike phalanx that way, I get charged the other way. I made a bit of a mistake, I pulled into him a bit too much, and I caught myself a little bit on his pike phalanx, which is pretty poor play. And then they get caught in these Greeks quite badly. Thankfully, Enosh turns up with the rest of his spearmen, does an excellent job of engaging these guys. I get anviled, which has two effects. One, it means I can't debuff the enemy cavalry, which is what I really wanted to do. You know, bearing in mind I've got my, not bribe, the other one, which I could use against him, but I couldn't while I was stuck in this fight. There we go, I finally got my, oh, it was bribe. Yeah, my bribe against him, which obviously gives him a massive debuff to his abilities. Puts his melee attack down to 50, look, which means he's not really going to be able to damage anyone else. So his anvil was really quite effective in that sort of situation, blocking my only defensive ability, which is kind of to debuff the enemy unit that's trying to attack me. So yeah, that wasn't ideal. But we are back on the offensive. This battle's well in our favour now. I'm pretty confident we're going to win at this point. So I'm just trying to head up to the space, see if I can get any extra damage on some of these guys we've got kicking around down here. See if I can bring my score up a little bit more. Because I'd like to get some damage maybe on some of these pikes, stuff like that. And taking a bit of missile fire from some Mistru and some of his archers. Actually end up getting caught here. I didn't think these guys were actually going to go so determinedly for me. But they actually caught me in a bit of an infantry charge. Did a little bit of damage against me. It wasn't too bad. And then they got feared, so we ended up routing really quite quickly. But yeah, it was a bit annoying. So I pull back this way. By getting on the side, I thought I should be able to get in without causing any friendly fire, which I can do. I've got a little bit of extra damage in on these guys, but then too many allied units were getting involved in that fight. I don't think I could really bring a lot extra to the match, so I just left them to it. I'd only be causing friendly fire if I started to shoot in there. But the last opportunity for a little bit of damage, is just on these pipe phalanx down here. I just run down. I get like a couple of javelins off into them, before they get absolutely mullered by a barrage. So brutal. I then pull back into the cap circle just to go for basically the cap points, really. I thought, you know, my couple of units will gain a few extra points by being in the circle, plus I get that 500 points at the end of the game being in the circle. And I'm just trying to get as many points, to get as much experience with these guys as quickly as I can, so I can start to get some of the upgrades, because I really need the upgraded Javelin with these guys, because it's so painful without it. So there we go, we won. I didn't contribute a lot to the game. It was a really tough match with the way that the enemy team played. They played really well, kind of kept me pinned in just with my own infantry most of the match. Although I guess I acted as a bit of a deterrent perhaps from some of the enemy infantry getting so stuck in, because they know I'll be able to apply quite a lot of damage against them. So yeah, I've been playing these guys a bit more. I've finally got onto the first shield now, which I didn't have in that game. It doesn't really add a lot, 3 to the missile block chance, because their missile block chance isn't very good either. I mean, not unsurprisingly, like every other statistic on this unit, it's pretty poor. Base 34. The next shield, it gets slightly better, it goes to +6, and the shield armor goes up a good amount. It's going to slightly make up for the shocking body armor statistics of these guys. But I want to finally get onto the Javelin, not for the weapon damage, but that +17 armor piercing damage is going to be lovely. You know, with a 69 base, I've got +17 is going to be really quite nice, and that 10% reload on a 4 second is going to be about will be exactly a 0.4 decrease in reload time. And that will be pretty good as well, so I'm pretty looking forward to getting that. And then other than that, other things, I see that you get some movement speed bonuses from the armor, plus a little bit of armor as well. Still going to be pretty bad on the armor point of view, but that 10% movement speed will be pretty good, because they do kind of need that. So yeah, not exactly a glowing review on this unit, I don't think. I think it could definitely do with a little bit of a love. Probably with changing some of these abilities, you know, please give me a hurl rather than a rapid throw. You know, give them a little bit of a buff to some of the armor values or the penetration values on the javelins, or the range, something. Make them a little bit nicer. I don't know if it gets a lot better at tier 10. Looks like we finally get a raised shields ability, which is going to be a bit of a nice upgrade for them. And they still get their dash, their skirmish tactics dash, but I don't know what they are like in terms of their missile penetration. 81 base, that's a lot nicer. And then we've got the options of going up to, so that will be like 101. That'll be a bit better. Yes, it's quite a significant upgrade once you get onto the tier 10s. Then things really improving quite a lot with that. So body armor like 136. There's some upgrades as well. Yeah, okay. So I think we've got a bit more to look forward to once we get onto the tier 10s. But this tier 9 is going to be a long and painful grind. So yeah, hopefully you've enjoyed this video, guys. If you have, let me know what you think about these guys in the comments down below. Do you think they look as terrible as I think they do? Have you played them yourselves? If you have, how do you find them? Any tactics that you think you could give me so I could play them a bit better? But other than that, please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Subscribe to me on Twitch as well. We're doing a bit more streaming than I used to. So be sure to check me out on there. And thanks, guys. I shall see you all on the next video.